All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Who's Right podcast. And I don't know what to say. We got swept by Cleveland, and what's next? Is this rock bottom? I don't know. What do you think? But before we get started, like the video, give us a comment. Subscribe to the channel. Victor, how you doing?
Is that even a question that you need to ask Mets fans nowadays? The response will always be horrible, because as much as we don't want to admit it, we put so much emotion into this team, and they when they disappoint, when they play like they have been playing on this 2-6 stretch and the road series, as the stretch goes longer than that, but that's just the road series. You just can't help but be disappointed, and I can't even say keep your heads up anymore because my head is down. I don't even know how to feel about this team. Obviously, Cleveland's a great baseball organization, and they've been winning for a long time. But to get beat in the ways that we've gotten beaten has just been heartbreaking. And there's nothing else that we can say.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. You sound like a veteran Met fan. But let's get right to it. Let's review the series that just happened on Monday. We had McGill and Lively. McGill looked good at times. Obviously started off shaky, but he looked good at times. But I would say not an overall great start, not an overall bad start. He just looked okay, and is that something that we're going to be okay with moving forward? I don't know. What do you think, Victor?
I think that he looked a lot better than what we have been used to in previous starts. Obviously, he still had some walks, and the walk that he had came back to bite him. But overall, he pitched well. He only gave up 2 walks, which is a win for him. And besides that one inning of work, we've just seen Cleveland be able to execute on opportunity, and that's what they did in all 3 of these games. They executed on opportunity, and the Mets just weren't able to bite back. McGill, I think, pitched good overall. Uh, Overall, I would say he probably pitched the best out of all Mets pitchers in this series, and that's not saying something great because obviously you said that he didn't pitch that well, but the story of the series has been, we find a way to lose, and in this one, we just needed a reason to lose, and we're using McGill as that reason.
Yeah. There's not much to say. Our bats were quiet. They didn't do anything on Monday, but that's kind of been the theme of the season. But let's get to game two. Game two, we had a Hauser start. Guys have been saying that he looked better, supposedly. Honestly, he looked okay for a few innings, but um, I still don't have any trust in Hauser. Our bats came alive a little bit on on Tuesday, but luckily they came alive because we would probably be even more upset today if they didn't come alive, just because they had a spot starter come in because Cookie couldn't make the start. So they had um, you know, um, a spot starter in Curry come in. He pitched 4 innings, gave up 2 runs, and did okay. But he was a spot starter, um, and and the bats came alive. McNeil, Alonso, I think even Bader um, did well for us that day. But at the end of the day, um, we didn't finish the game off. We kept fighting back. I think you could feel good, I guess, about trying to fight back and to get into this game. But I more look at it that the reason we had to fight back was because Hauser was starting. I don't know about you.
It seems like one of those games where everything was going wrong for the Mets. You started the game off with Hauser pitching great. He went, I think, 3 or 4 innings of no hits allowed, no two innings, but those other 2 innings that he went, he still allowed. He still went well. He still started off great, and there was one of those starts where we were like, man, maybe Hauser's trying to fight for his job, and he looks good, but the defense just didn't back him up. We saw Starling Marte make an error out there, and then he just started letting a lot of balls be hit hard, and it was one of those things where we are like, all right, this is just Hauser's. He's got to hang in there because he's pitching well enough to keep us in this game. And every inning, it seemed like the Mets were trying to respond and get back on the board, and then Hauser just let off a couple more earned runs to increase the lead. And we want to give Adrian Hauser the benefit of the doubt because honestly, this is probably the best that he's pitched since joining the Mets. Well, he had one start that he pitched well, but this is probably his best start in a while. And we want to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he kept us in the game, but he really didn't. You can't really blame anybody else. You can't blame yourself you can't blame Thomas Nido for calling a pitch high in the strike zone and giving up that bomb to Jose Ramirez. As a pitcher, you should know better. That's Jose Ramirez, and you can't give him anything close to the strike zone. First base was open, as a lot of us like to say, but hindsight's 2020. This Guardians team just kind of beat up on us, and they're looking really good right now. I know in years past they've always been pitcher heavy and bat lacking, but this year it seems like the opposite. But their bullpen is still good. They came in, beat us up 2 times in this series. We had the bases loaded, or bases 2 men on, and a reliever came in to relieve them, and walks the first one. I forget the name of the reliever, but walks the first one and then strikes out the side. And stuff like that just hurts so much because when you see the Guardians being able to execute on 2 outs against your high leverage relievers, it just it's unacceptable from a team that's trying to push for playoffs because we can't just make the excuse this team is just good. We're going to lose these kinds of games. At what point do we have to say that the Mets are just bad and that this is just not good baseball, not fun baseball to watch, and not have that excuse of we're just facing good competition? Because at the end of the day, when we get push comes to shove, we got to beat these kinds of teams.
Yeah, no, for sure. And they're they're not getting an excuse from us on not being able to be competitive of these teams against these teams. And that's one of the things that and we're not asking you to win every game. We're asking to be competitive. And that's the theme of the season. It is not competitive. And we don't get a competitive start from Hauser, which puts us behind the 8 ball. We score 6 runs and still lose. So, our offense shows up and we still don't get the pitching that we need. But let's move on to the third game. The third game kind of was a game of missed opportunities. You got JD Martinez coming up, I think twice in the game, and with opportunities to drive in runs. And this is why he's here. JD Martinez is not here to have a good average. He's here to drive in runs when we need him. And twice in this game, he had opportunities to drive in runs, and blow this game open because Tristan McKenzie did not look sharp. We talked about this is Cleveland's best pitcher, and he didn't look sharp, and we didn't take advantage of the opportunities, and we let him hang around, and we let him stay in the game as long as possible. When we could have, this is kind of similar to that Christian Sanchez, the Phillies game, where we could have knocked him out early if we would have just executed when we could have. That's the theme of this game because we had Alonso produce. We had Lindor get his average above the Mendoza line, above 200. Small victories, but it's about missed opportunities. And the missed opportunities are glaring not only with Pete, because he did, can't get too mad at him. He got a home run, but with Pete missing out opportunities and JD Martinez missing out opportunities to blow this game over or to tie the game.
This is one of those things where we're always looking at our young guys and saying, why aren't they producing? Why aren't they driving in the runs? Because obviously, you have DJ Stewart right after him and Mark Vientos right after him in those games. But this is what we signed him for. This is what we signed him to do, is to come in these situations. And I know that we can't put a lot of blame to him because he was able to get on base a lot in this series. He was driving in. He was hitting the ball a lot. And so he did his job in parts, but it's what we talk about all the time. We have to start hitting in tandem. We have to start getting momentum on our side. And this whole series, momentum was off our side. Because even with those home runs that we hit, nobody was on base. So at the end of the day, you get 3 runs out of 3 home runs. And that doesn't happen too often, where you have 3 home runs in a game and you still lose a game. But it happens to the Mets because that's just the luck that we're in right now. When you have Harrison Bader hitting the ball hard, no one else is producing. And I remember for a time we were complaining about how Harrison Bader was the problem with this team, and now he's producing, and he's actually probably producing the best out of anybody on this team. But it doesn't mean anything. And last thing on this game is just you Reed Garrett falling apart in that last inning. He was your boy, and he kind of fell through the cracks. We saw him get a little human. His ERA went above a 1 in this series, and he took his first loss on the series on the season. And ultimately, this is just what happens when things aren't going our way. When we don't have when we have the power, when we have the production of the bats, then our pitching ends up failing us. And our pitching failed us in those later innings. Ottavino got tagged up a little bit, and the Mets just weren't able to respond. But this is something that we need to be able to figure out. We need to be able to figure out how, when things don't go our way, when the opposing team comes and ties up the game, how do we combat that adversity? How do we fight back into games? Because it can't just be roll over and die. That's not a formula for success long term.
Yeah, no, and obviously, you've been, you want to keep getting on Reed Garrett, and he gave up a run, but he gave up 1 run. It wasn't his best outing. Still wasn't a blow up outing. I would consider Ottavino's outing to be a little bit worse, just because he's coming. We expect Ottavino. Ottavino's the veteran, right? He's getting paid the millions. Garrett's still, again, paid peanuts compared to Ottavino. And so, Ottavino basically letting the game get away from us, really kind of cemented the loss for us. Is Ottavino getting blown up in that inning, giving up 2 runs. But again, even if they did that, I still think that it's a missed opportunities with Martinez and Alonso, and I'm starting to, but we'll get into our concerns. Let me not jump too far ahead. So as far as the hitter standout of the game, it's a hard choice, because there wasn't much going on except for game 2, and you had Lindor had 4 hits in the last 2 games. Alonso had a couple home runs this series, but nobody really stood out. I guess if we have to give it to somebody, we'll give it to because of the home runs, we'll give it to Alonso. But I'm not too happy about that, just because giving it to Alonso is a consolation prize at this point because of the way our offense is behaving.
You can even say you could give it to Vientos because he really woke up this series. He passed Brett Beatty in his extra base hits from the season with a tenth of the plate appearances, and this might be the end of Brett Beatty, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Mark Vientos came alive. He's looking like he's trying to provide some spark to the team because even after the game when they lost 6-7, they interviewed him. They're like, "How does it feel to have that home run? How does it feel to be a part of this team and to be able to contribute that?" He was like, "It wasn't enough. We didn't get the win. So I got to go back out there and do my job." And that's to, drive baseballs. And that's might be what the Mets need. They need a killer. They need someone that's going to go out there and force the Mets to win because obviously they're not getting help from anybody else. And so we liked what we saw from Mark Vientos this series. He could be the star.
Yeah, and let's get into the concerns, right? You know, this is a concern for Beatty at this point. What we talked about the last podcast, that Vientos had to produce like crazy offensively, and on a team that doesn't have a lot of production, it looks like he's producing crazy offensively. So, even though he's just doing, decent, he's doing a good job. It's not like he's had a home run every at bat, or driving in runs in every at bat, but he's been on base a lot, and so this is what we talked about with Beatty, that he might lose his job because um, um, the offense, right? Because the rest of the team isn't doing well, and it's a shame. It's disappointing, but it's gonna be interesting today, Thursday, when we're recording this. Um, I don't know if they'll make the move today or on Friday, and when you're listening to this, on if Beatty's going to go down or not to AAA and bring up a defensive middle infielder like Iglesias or something like that to come up and have that protection in the middle of the infield, and then
It's
we
so
could bring him in for defense for Vientos at the end of the game.
Yeah, it's so tough, man, because you hate to see Brett Beatty get sent down again because this happened last year, and you thought because he got sent down, he came back the next year. He had worked on some stuff and looked good, but a lot of it you want to point to individual players, but I'll put my concern somewhere else, and I'll point to the coaching staff because this can't just be a thing where all the bats aren't hitting in motion. And, you have Francisco Lindor not hitting well. You have Jeff McNeil hitting, 240. You have some guys that are producing, but, you know, you have Brett Beatty and some other people not doing what they've been doing. Start of the season, what we've seen sparks of. And, we talked about different things that can attribute to that, but at the end of the day, we can't just blame it all on coaching. Obviously, these guys are their own individual players, and they need to be able to work themselves out of funk. We see JD Martinez has done that all throughout his career, and it's just something that we haven't seen from Francisco Lindor or Brett Beatty. So Francisco Lindor is another part of my concern, but I'll let you get in here in a little bit before I continue to rant.
Yeah, no, and I'm not gonna put it on the coaching staff because, for example, a guy like McNeil's been doing this for 2 years. This is a new coaching staff, right? Or fairly new. There are a couple pieces that stuck have stuck, but for the most part, this is a new coaching staff, and McNeil might be this guy. They talk about our team. Which one's the real team? The 2022 team or the 2023 team? And honestly, it might be the 2023 team. You know what I mean? And there was listen to a podcast, Mike Silva, I think it is, Talking Mets, and he was saying that maybe this core isn't suited to play in New York, and so maybe it's time to let go of some pieces, like an Alonso. As much as you don't want to see it, maybe it's time to let go of Alonso. Obviously, Lindor's not going anywhere because of the contract, and Nimmo is your best piece of that core, and you're not going to let him go. But maybe Alonso's gotta have a new start, right? McNeil's got to go, and we just gotta start new. Start from the ashes to build something up. Because you said the coaching staff, but I say more. Maybe this is our team, and 2022 was a career year for all of those guys, right? And 2023 is really the team that the guys that they are. Alonso might be this guy from now on. And do we want to commit money to Alonso if this is the guy he is? And I would say no, especially if Vientos shows that he can play. He can play first base. It's not like he's that much worse defensively than Alonso. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
and we could see Mark Vientos playing first base at the end of the year. I would think how things are going. If this upcoming home trip or home series or home stand doesn't go as planned, and we find ourselves, 10 games below, 15 games below 500, then this could be one of those situations where we look at the Marlins and see what they're doing and with their organization, and they're starting to sell pieces early. Maybe a team will take Alonso early. Maybe they'll take a Luis Severino early and start working on trying to push for that wild card where the Mets have fallen, below their expectations and aren't pushing for a wild card anymore. And so Mark Vientos could be that future first baseman of the future, but I don't know if that's the right move. Obviously, we've talked about before how Francisco Lindor, how a lot of Mets fans feel like giving him that big contract has come back to hurt the Mets. And obviously it has, because he might be that one core piece that you're hanging on to and that you're stuck with for the next 10 years. You backed yourself into a corner that is pretty much the core of this team, because obviously he's not going anywhere and he hasn't produced. He obviously had the 30-30 season last year, but when you're inconsistent, when your team needs it, that's what it counts. It doesn't matter when you're producing, when you're losing games, or when your season's already lost, because what good is that? We see that with Mike Trout, and obviously he's a MVP, two-time MVP, and his career is going to be tainted by the fact that he's been on a losing organization, obviously by injuries too, but his career isn't going to be as flavored because he's on that organization, and he's there to stay. But so is Francisco Lindor. But I don't see much changing, to be honest. I don't see us changing much with this core. We've talked about McNeil. We can say all we want about McNeil. He had a good series for himself. Well, not that good. He just hit a couple of home runs. But we can talk about trading him. But other than that, Pete, Nimmo, Lindor, those are all guys that I think are staying and that you have to continue to try to build around.
no, and that's where I'm going to disagree with you. I think I'm agree with Mike Silva on talking Mets and say maybe it is time to get rid of these pieces. Trade Severino, trade Quintana, trade Bader, trade. I don't know if McNeil has any market because of his contract. But trade Alonso. Alonso still has a market. I don't know how good it is, but at the end of the day, we can't start. At the end of the day, we need to rebuild. Maybe the mistake was that we retooled versus rebuild, right? Because Cohen came in here, and we appreciate it because 22 was an awesome season. We appreciate that he tried to throw money at the problem, but at the end of the day, maybe we just need to burn it all down and start from the ashes. And I don't think that's going to happen completely because, like you said, we're stuck with the Lindor contract. Nobody's going to take that contract, I believe. And you'd hate to lose a guy like Nimmo because he's a solid bat no matter what team he's on or what team he's playing for, because he's not gonna nothing's gonna get on him that's gonna take him off his groove. And so I think we need to burn it all down and rebuild it up, sell every piece that we can.
Yeah, I mean, and that might be the solution, because when you look at this team, you question you see all the talent on it and you question where the problem is. And there's no obvious answers to where the problem is. And maybe just selling off all the pieces, letting them go grind it out in their own prospective areas might be the best way for the Mets to see sustainable winning in the future. And David Stearns is smart. He's a smart guy. He's done this before. That might be what he does in the offseason, but that's not what we're going to focus on. We have to focus on what we can do now, or what the Mets can do now to build on this momentum or lack of momentum. How can they get the ball rolling? And it starts with, lighting a fire under them, getting things to go in motion, because things haven't been going well for the Mets, and there's no sign of life with this team.
Well, and unfortunately, when when you got a team like this, there is really no way of building that momentum other than selling pieces off and letting young kids come up and fight for a spot. Bring that energy, and obviously it's not going to be a complete sell off, but if you think about it, we we trade Martinez, Alonso, Bader, uh, not McNeil because McNeil has no value. Um, but we trade those three pieces. Marte maybe. Marte still has value even though he can frustrate us as time. But if he's a third outfielder somewhere, that might be that might be a piece that we could trade off. But those are four pieces off that lineup that we're frustrated with, right? Four pieces of that lineup that we're frustrated with that can maybe help us move some pieces in, right? JD Stewart, as much as we hated on him in spring training, he could be the DH, right? Vientos at first, leave Beatty as if we're already on that rebuilding mode, leave Beatty at third and let him figure it out. Bring up Iglesias and bring up some other pieces that that want to fight for a spot, and maybe that's the fire that we need, and not necessarily trying to make just this is the definition of insanity, trying to make things happen with the same thing that we have.
And that might be the best course of action for the Mets. And I hope that's the course of action that they take, is for them to do the former and selling those pieces, instead of the latter, and selling off their young guys to try to build on this team. Because I've heard a lot of fans talk about trying to get rid of Brett Beatty now, and I'm like, dude, what is your issue with Brett Beatty? He's still a young guy. He's still continuing to try to learn. Obviously, he's been in a rut, but we've seen sparks of brilliance from him. And I think that if you give him the opportunity, he can provide and he can produce. But that only comes when you give those guys room to grow. And obviously, Mark Vientos is playing really well right now, but he doesn't have anywhere to grow with Brett Beatty. So something has to give. You can't have both. You can't have a sustainable winning club by hanging on to pieces that aren't producing, but also expect these guys to develop and not give them playing time. This is just, that's bad logic and insanity at the end of the day.
Well, and that's the thing. The same Met fans that are crying about Brett Beatty are the ones that were fighting for Brett Beatty before. And again, we're Brett Beatty is taking the blame for the rest of the lineup, right? Our biggest frustration is actually the rest of the lineup. If McNeil and Alonso and Martinez and Lindor were producing and Marte was consistently producing, we wouldn't be talking about Beatty. So, and that's the biggest frustration for me, is that we don't even have the right understanding of what's going on. Brett Beatty's not the problem. The problem is the rest of the lineup, the veterans on the team.
Yeah, and this is my final concern with the Mets team. But finally, with that being said, the concern is, are the Mets putting too much reliance on their young guys to be able to get them over the hump? Because we see a lot of people talking about now, and this might just be the fans and not the organization, but they're like, Just wait until we get Francisco Alvarez back because he's going to be the savior of the organization. Things went bad when he got hurt, and I think that when he comes back, we can be a playoff team again. The problem with that is you don't know that. We were bad before when we were 0-5 or 1-5 with Francisco Alvarez on the team. And then you know what we did then? We're like, oh yeah, we just gotta wait for JD Martinez to come up because he's gonna be the savior of the team. What happened? He came up, nothing happened, and the Mets were still playing bad. And who knows what sparked that moment of that the Mets are going to remember this season as the high point of our season. But it wasn't any piece being added. And so I just hope, that was my concern, is that I hope that there's not too much reliance on these young guys to be able to get the Mets over the hump, because it's not going to be up to them. It's going to be up to everyone else.
And I completely agree with you on that, because this is what we're talking about. There, we're Beatty's paying because of the reliance on the young guys, and that's the problem, and that's why I say it's time to sell off. Burn it down and sell the pieces, and let's start over. Obviously, there's some pieces we can't sell out, but there are some pieces that we can, and make it a whole new team, and because at this point, what are we doing? But let's move on. I think we ranted enough, and let's get to it. Preview the next series against San Francisco. It's going to be a tough homestand. We got San Francisco, LA, and Arizona coming in. So it's not going to be fun. I don't think, anyways, the way things are going. But our lone bright spot is Friday. We got Christian Scott Day versus Harrison. Again, I think it's really going to be dependent on our bats. To be honest with you. Then on Saturday we got Severino versus Hicks. Hicks, ever since being converted to a starter, has looked well, has looked good. I mean, he's pitching to a 2.38 ERA, and he's been the guy that they were hoping to get, right? And then on Sunday, to close out the series, we got our old buddy Logan Webb against Manaea. So I think it's going to be a tough series, and like you said, maybe this is time where we start evaluating what we're going to be doing with this team, and seeing if Stearns starts making a move early.
Yeah, the ace off of the series is definitely going to be that Saturday game with Severino versus Hicks. Hicks is a flamethrower. Well, he hasn't touched 100 this year, but we know that he can from his relief appearances with the St. Louis Cardinals, and he's pitched pretty well this season. And Severino's trying to have a bounce back start, where he didn't pitch horribly, but he didn't pitch to what we would have liked to see from him. So I think he's going to try to get revenge this series and try to pitch well. And so that's going to be the game to watch. I think that this series looks like a 1-2. I just put it plainly. That just seems like we're not going to take more than one game from this series, if we can take one game, because the game that I see us taking is that Scott start on that opening series, and that's just reliant on Scott shutting them out for 9 innings because we need the bats to produce, and who knows if that's going to happen. But
no doubt. I'm agree with you that that's the game that I'm looking forward to watching, not only because of Scott, but because that's the best chance that we got to win this series. That's the state of the Mets right now. So let's get into it. Who you got for? I went first last time, right? So who you got as the top player for the Mets top batter for the Mets this series?
I'm going to continue to ride the hot wave. Not going to go with Mark Vientos, although I do think he gets 2 out of the 3 starts this series. If not all 3, we might see Brett Baty be sent down as soon as tomorrow. But I'm going to ride the other hot hand, and someone who had a home run yesterday and is riding in like an 8-game hitting streak or something like that. But why not nobody else but Harrison Bader? Harrison Bader can continue to spark this team, light a fire under them. We see he plays with passion, and let's just hope that he continues to ride that hot wave.
Oh, young Padawan, young Padawan. Put in the reliance on a fourth outfielder. But it's okay. It's okay. We'll forgive you on that one because again, the master will continue to win. And my guy, and you should have picked him. Is I'm gonna go with the hot hand and go with Mark Vientos, and he's gonna um, keep it going. I do think I have a feeling that Brett Brady's going to be sent down, unfortunately, um, and um, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. The pitching, I'm gonna stick with Garrett. I think he's gonna keep it going. So I'm gonna stick with Garrett. I was thinking about picking Christian Scott, but at the end of the day, I can't trust these bats. So I'm gonna go with Garrett.
That's a good pick. You know, he's been our most reliable pitcher, although he had a hiccup yesterday. That's not a huge thing to be alarmed of. But we haven't seen Edwin Diaz so far this in this series or in this past Guardian series. We saw him get up in the bullpen, but as soon as the Mets got up and got into it, they put him right back down. But I don't think it's going to be about the pitching doing extremely well. I think it's going to be about Edwin Diaz getting back to form. And it's going to start with this series. I think he's going to have a few outings where we're going to look at, he's going to have 2 outings where we're going to look at, and we're like, man, he's looking like Edwin Diaz again. And this could be a start to something good. This is my hope. This is me saying, Edwin Diaz, come on, let's trying to rally him on, and let's just hope that if he does get back into the game, the Mets fans give him a nice standing ovation, try to get his head right. Obviously, it worked for Lindor for a little bit, but I think he needs it after the depressing turn of events that he's had. So let's go with Edwin Diaz.
Not a bad pick. Not a bad pick. Only because I hope it happens. But so who's your Mets killer of the series?
Someone that is a rookie this year. He's been riding in the hot hand. I mean, he's been hitting well, and he's been getting into games consistently. And that's the right fielder, Luis Matos, or how do you say that? Matos.
Yep.
Luis Matos. I think he's gonna have a good series. He's riding the hot hand. And the Giants all of a sudden are riding a winning streak. So they've been really good lately, and I think that they continue to do it under Luis Matos.
Yeah, no, that's a good pick. I was actually eyeing him, and so that's a good pick by you. But I'm going to go with Wade Jr. Last time I picked him, and he didn't get much in the game because San Francisco does the whole switching off, platooning, but the only game that I don't see him playing in is on Sunday against Mania. So he's going to start both Friday and Saturday, most likely. So I'm gonna go with Wade Jr. and we'll see. Again, not so much to hurt us, but at the end of the day, we're hurting ourselves. So let's keep it going. I'll always love the Mets. So remember, guys, we're not going to get into the minor leagues. I know we had Clifford hit his first home run for Binghamton yesterday, and getting out of Brooklyn, it looks like it's already paying dividends for him to get out of Brooklyn. Actually, well, really quick, McLean had a decent outing yesterday, and Sproat had a decent outing as well. But other than that, there's some other things that have been going on in the minor leagues, but overall, a lot of promotions over the past week. And you love to see it. You love to see the aggressiveness to promoting these guys. But You know, we're gonna end it there because we've done a pretty long video, even though we wanted to keep this one short. Remember to like the this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know how you feel. Are you feeling the way we're feeling? So let us know. And Victor, any last words?
No. Well, last thing on the Mets prospect thing. He's not a prospect, but he was pitched yesterday in the minor leagues. Jose Bruto went 6 shutty, and someone that we want to see back up again. So I don't know how you do it, but bring Jose Bruto back up once he's eligible, and get rid of Adrian Hauser, because I think it's about time.
All right, yeah, no doubt. You know, and maybe the way to bring those guys back up is to start selling some pieces. But we'll leave that for another day. Until next time, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.